Overrated, episode 16. We are going to talk about a recent topical issue about AKM not getting into Overwatch League, and to a lesser degree also other players from Rogue that should be considered basically of the same caliber. If we're, thinking of this world-class team, I don't think you can particularly just say AKM was above all the other players if we're talking about them. Would you say that?
On his DPS role, like,
It's hard
I
to
mean, you can't really, like, positioning wise, I can't really compare them in between them. They were playing different roles. Definitely on his DPS role, he was, having a huge impact on everything. The only thing you can compare players that they play different roles is like deaths, right? And first deaths. That's the only only common criteria between them. So it's kind of hard really to just say I will pick this guy from the team because he's the best, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
what
I would say is how you compare players is basically you look at the roles they compete with, and then you look at, so for instance, if you say in your mind, okay, AKM is a top 10 world DPS player, can you say that about anyone else on Rogue for their respective roles?
Oh, that's a tricky question. So I could definitely say that for Anko.
Yes, definitely.
I think Nico was kind of screwed by the fact that he had to flex between Genji and Diva, two different opposites of the spectrum, and at the same time we have another example of a guy who did it, but his performance on Genji was so spectacular that the other part of his play was like neglected, and it was Shadowburn. It was back in the day when Genji men started to play Divas and Zaryas for some reason. Like, we saw Seagull doing it, we saw Haxal flexing to some weird Zarya picks and stuff like that. So Nico was good in this sense. I think Nox is a very intelligent player that can play Winston and Lucio to a great level. We haven't seen him play Reinhardt, for example. So, like, again, it's very limited the way you can judge Nox. And soon again, yeah, he's definitely a top 10 tracer. Like, easy. Yes. I think easy. And now he has shown us so many such a great variety of heroes with Doomfist, with McCree, with Junkrat. So it's even like he's not even one trick anymore. That's the only fear we had for Soon, because he was the first, I think, tracer one trick, except for Bunny or some other Korean that we haven't seen before. But in the West, I think he was the first one to cement alongside Valutaya. I think maybe Valutaya was even before.
Yes. Like, he usually tends to just play one hero for half a year. Yeah. But yeah, basically, so I guess to a lesser degree also because Anko seems to be on an Overwatch League team now, per report by ESPN. I guess from Rogue, both Nox and AKM would be the most egregious situation if they were not to get into Overwatch League. I guess, there's some things to be said about players like Wins where their performance is inherently based on the intangibles, which we can't judge, right? We don't know how good of a shot caller Wins is.
Even then, not all top 10 global teams have the best Lucius in the world, right? I mean, we know Dobby.
Definitely don't.
Yeah, we know Dobby, we know Harry Hook. Then there is, like, a great universe between us that you really need to nitpick Lucio players on specific parts of their playstyle. Like, for example, Boeing is very good at positioning, at making some plays that movement and stuff like that, but he's not like on Toby level. So again, you focus on him like being aggressive, doing his own thing. Then you had Waka Waka back in Apex Season 3, for example. He was a little more passive. Again, he doesn't strike out that Toby style. Like, so in a top 10, even Wins, for example, yeah, he could be like a top 10 Lucio, since you have to factor in the performance of the whole team, as in the top 10. So again, I wouldn't go and just bash on Wins not playing his fully when other teams in top 10 have even worse Lucius, I think.
Definitely.
and Lucius, they can't play Soldier because he flexed Soldier in the last weeks, and he's shown that he has also proficiency on that hero as well. So
yeah. Let's not forget you need to be in the top 12 because there's 12 teams in Overwatch League, right? And I mean, there are some restrictions as to language, and you know, yeah, there's some circumstances where if you're top 10 Lucio and you're the 10th best Lucio, there's a possibility because of how culture works and you know connections that you might not be in because the 13th best Lucio speaks the language of the team your organization is desiring to create, and you know there are these social factors. What definitely shouldn't be happening is that a Lucio that is like not top 20 in the world is on an Overwatch League team. Leaks, those will be in. Those will be in.
I mean, you have players who have never played an official match, or you know they haven't played in a tournament for the past, let's say, 10 months or something. So I'm not surprised with what will happen with the Overwatch League right now. Is just what people feel comfortable with, what people feel like it will give them a better environment to work with, because it's like the first stage right now. So you can't go harm, you know, by assembling a superstar team like FaZe Clan in CS:GO, where they just went out of the way and just got all the best players they thought they need and just form a super team and think and hope it will work. So some people are not like that, like these guys. They're just more, you know, down on the ground and just go for like people who are familiar with which they can work and stuff like that. But why wouldn't you want to work with AKM is a big question right now, isn't it?
Yes. So I guess let's roll this up. So the way I've you know categorized this in my head, how we're going to go about this is like list arguments for and against why AKM should be or shouldn't be picked up, or you know how it happened, like it happened. And there was once a guy that in early August said, before they sign players, Overwatch League coach less teams must sign coaches, and there are not that many around. Right? There's a tweet of yours.
Oh, that guy, yeah. Yeah, I wrote it.
So, and you elaborate later on saying, my point is that coaches come with preferences, so I could see some reoccurring themes based on them. So, obviously, first interesting talking point is there have been some rumors about consultancies, right? So people are being hired to consult on who's going to be on these rosters, and that concept sort of confuses me because, okay, what I agree with you here and what you're saying is you hire a coach. This coach has a concept of Overwatch which he wants to form his team around.
Exactly.
The best application of a consultant could then be, for instance, if I don't know about Korea, I go to a consultant and say, I need a very aggressive Winston that is very good at kill confirming, not necessarily at creating as much space, but is very good at pressure. This is my, like, I want to play heavy dive. I don't care about his Reinhardt much. I just want to heavy dive for you. Does Korea have someone like this? And then a consultant comes along and says, yes, here have, you know, Mano. And it isn't a fair assessment of his actual playstyle, but you get the drift, right? What we've seen,
or you go to Baroy and he gives you like other, you know, from everywhere in the world.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So someone like Baroy from Winston's Lab would take the stats and based on them would suggest certain players to certain teams in order to fill these holes. What then was very interesting was that people were talking about how consultants build entire teams for Overwatch League teams. And then these consultants don't become the coach. They leave the organization, so they just collect their consultant fee.
Win-win.
And they are out, and then a coach takes over. Like, isn't that a conflict of interest insofar as the coach would then have to make work an idea of Overwatch that the consultant had, and then make do with, like, in what situation is that even preferable?
Why do you ask me? Like,
Is there anything, any devil's advocate?
Well,
So
the only good thing about it is that you can't blame either of them, because the first one just picked the players out of his own prepositions and whatever he thought that would work. The other guy has to work with them, so you can't blame the first one for picking them. And since you can say that the coach didn't do the work he was supposed to, and you can't blame the coach because the coach didn't pick the parts that he wanted to. So
yeah. So
maybe that's a great scheme of all that you can't blame anyone in the long run. I don't know.
Virtually the only respectable, I guess, suggestion I've heard was maybe they'd signed a coach that doesn't know as much about Overwatch yet, but is like a coach personality that in the long run, so in Season 2, Season 3, will have learned the game and also will have all the other skills that a coach needs, but just doesn't have the expertise to build a team right now because he isn't in the scene as much or doesn't know the players and, you know, doesn't even know the playstyle. Though I really question how well that can work, but yeah, that would be one approach to explain it.
If this is the case, that confirms my first tweet that says there are not many great coaches around, and you have to get coaches from other esports or from other scenes that have only the portion of expertise you talked about, how to manage players, how to manage conflicts with personalities and stuff like that. And again, keep in mind that the first season will be played, and let's hope it's the first season, because otherwise, the more you delay things going to the global scale that Blizzard wants, the more problems you will have. The first season will be played in LA, and if people stay in hotels or or team houses or whatever, and with the different cultures for the players, exactly, especially from Asia, from Korea and China, it would really help them to avoid some things. But for the North America side of things, with players that have been on North American soil for quite some time, and most of them obviously have, I don't really know, like, why would you go for this kind of coaching? Like, do they really think that since you have all the, well, not the money on the world, but all the opportunities of the world to create a roster that can operate at least for one season, right? They can operate with each other, they can operate properly. Why would you value this kind of stuff so much?
Exactly.
And not the edge that a coach with knowledge on the game would give you, or at least like have analysts working with a consultant so as to pick the players, and then the analysts sign with the team, right? That they stay with the team and they take over and help the coach do his work properly.
Exactly. And then the analyst himself could learn, some of the coaching skill set. And then, if things don't work out, he then also has, valuable experience to build up on and might become a coach in a different Overwatch League team. We don't know, right? This issue is going to become even more pronounced once more teams join next season, right? So we need more coaches, and we will need more coaches. And based on the results, a lot of coaches will also never see Overwatch League again, I would think. Right? So
we'll see. We'll see. That's for me, that's the interesting thing. Like, I know in this episode we're going to talk about AKM, but for me, from the very first beginning, from the very first point of the announcement, was like, okay, the first league is going to come and pass, and I think it's going to be the most successful of all, at least of the first 3 seasons, because it will have all the teams in one place. It's a format that most esport audience is familiar with. That they are on the same arena, they play the games, they don't travel around, have different stuff going on every single time. You will have like other things leading up to this or happening at the same time, like the preseason matches that Blizzard announced. It's going to lead into the Overwatch League, so there will be some kind of hype built up with all the new things that Blizzard is going to to work with in the first season. But then comes a crucial point. Okay, the first season came and passed. You got the results you got. How do you move forward to the next season? You need to make some changes, right? If you want to stay competitive and at least get a title in the first 3 seasons, because this is where things are kind of, random in a sense, and upsets can happen, and you have like the best shot at it. But because after the league cements itself and the process is known, other factors come into play, like which team has the best practice, the best environment, and stuff like that, and they start to go ahead of to get ahead of other teams. So if you're an organization and you care about your fame, your legacy, and stuff like that, the first 2 seasons or even the first season is the time to strike. Is the time to get the best players, to have that early win that you can build some hype around for the following seasons,
Exactly.
even if your results aren't as good, right?
Yes. So basically, what you want to be is you want to be the Manchester United of Overwatch League. You want to be, the TSMs that just keep winning the regional league every single time, barring some few mistakes, right? You want to have that sort of association with you, like you're the big winning organization.
If you were to think it, that that's like the first season, so it's like the old Fnatic in League of Legends, that they won all these major titles back in their time, and Fnatic still builds fame, and and still uses this content and these achievements as a way to get more followers and more fans, right?
Yes.
You can never, no matter what kind of situation led into this title, right? Even if it was the cheesiest thing going on at the time, and you were just winning based on using the cheesiest thing to your advantage, it doesn't matter. In the end, what people will remember, it's like you won the title, and therefore it's the best.
Exactly.
It's the best thing that you can get the title early on, and then you can build on that. Otherwise, you're going to have to restructure your team for the second season. And what happens then? Like, is there going to be enough talent around that can replace your talent that you have already on the team and take it even further? Because you want upgrades. You don't want just replacements. You want upgrades going into season 2. So maybe what you're saying, and maybe I have misjudged you, is like, keep AKM out of all season 1 so that when he comes in, he's an upgrade to the other lame people as well.
I mean, he will probably be, unless we lose him to a different game, because talented people like this don't stand to stick around when they can't achieve the highest level possible, right? Though we will see, like how it will turn out.
Give me the reasons why AKM needs to be on a team. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why he shouldn't be on a team.
Okay. So, one reason. Okay, so basically, one of the reasons why they had problems getting on teams was obviously that they were very late to the party, right? They thought they would be in, then they weren't in, for reasons that we don't want to discuss here, and then that followed that a lot of teams already had their rosters, so like they didn't seem available. Then the others signed contracts, and now just taking the rogue core then becomes increasingly difficult, because most teams have already trialed all the other options and have signed them already. And because you have a certain limitation to your roster, you can't just if you have an idea of how you want to build your team, you sign 6 players, you can't just completely throw it away, get a new team, unless they are the definitive best team in the world, right? So
DC Busan, we're talking about them right now.
Maybe we'll see.
No, are you talking about? Okay. Yeah.
So the other reason that comes from this is that they were late to the party because they thought they would be in, is they had long contracts, right? And with long contracts come big buyouts. So this is another thing where probably Overwatch League teams went like, okay, yeah, we heard you were available, but we already built our roster. We've also spent a lot of the allocated money we got from our investors onto our roster. And what's your buyout? Okay, that number, nope, not touching that. with a 6-foot pole, especially. And here's another good reason why he shouldn't be in, is they obviously didn't have a good performance recently, right? To which I say, I also have an article coming out on this, but like, just this recency bias hasn't historically led to success in Overwatch. So, for instance, a team like Envious, if we think about it, had their slumps. They didn't ever slump as low as Rogue did, but like they dropped.
Yeah,
off a little bit.
they were lucky enough in Apex Season 2 to not be placed in a group of death. That's true. That's true. I agree with you.
Right, and then obviously they would also probably wouldn't have won Apex if it wasn't for the patch.
Yeah.
Right.
True up to a point. Yeah.
So. They are like the fact that they stuck together and then also augmented their core in it and sort of fixed these certain issues was definitely helpful in now that we think of them as one of the most accomplished teams in the world. Now, this is one criticism that Rogue has to also take, is that they were very, very reluctant in accepting substitutions or additions to their roster, because we broke on this show that Colsey would be replacing Wins for Weekend, and the immediate reaction from Rogue was, okay, Colsey is only going to play this very one match. Don't confuse it. We're not opening up our roster to more substitutions. We're all 6 going to play also in Subtone. We're also going to play in Overwatch League together. We don't want these additions right now. We are a package deal, and it's sort of probably then felt even less approachable to investors now, if you were thinking about the idea of picking them up as a core, because they to the outside felt so reluctant to have these augmentations to their team set upon them. And
if this game was CS:GO, like if it was another game that didn't have this kind of structure league, the structure league that it's run by the developer, right? This kind of argument that they don't want substitutions or substitutes when they're running on the basis of a language-driven force, right? They're a team with the same language, the same culture, and therefore they try to build on it. It's the same as Koreans right now. Right? You never discuss picking Koreans, not picking Koreans because they don't want to play with other players from the world, right? You accept the fact that they have something going on, and that this thing is being enchanted by the fact that they speak the same language. So you take out of the equation miscommunications or language barrier issues or the clash of cultures. One of them like assaulting or offending a teammate without him intending to, because there's like this kind of cultures things. And anyways, like for example, if you think of SK Gaming right now in CS:GO, they will never pick up like the best player in the world if he's not Brazilian, because they operate upon this set thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it wasn't really the problem that they didn't accept the substitutions or something like that. And again, if you talked about Colsey, but I recall right now that Colsey was still playing in that match from Europe. You would have to relocate him from Europe to America just to have him play for you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this means that the organization would have to accept this, and we have to get him in the org, right?
Yes.
And this is not something that you're going to do as an organization like Rogue is, that they're going to minimize the cost or the operating cost, right? This is something I find it like logical to do as an endemic org in esports. Like you don't have this capital investment behind you that you can just flew around the world players and just have as many trials and whatever you want just to have options available. And again, there's like another thing that the team has operated, I think, a bit like they are the ones making some decisions within the organization of how they run the overall the rogue team, right? Like Wins probably has some say in some stuff. All the people have their opinion on the roster changes and stuff like that. It's not like they were formed by a coach as we see right now in all teams, and therefore it's like I got you
Yes.
here, so I am the one to say where you go from here or how we proceed. Like so,
Yeah.
when you have this kind of environment, right? I don't see it as a negative, specifically that they didn't get the substitutions. I see it as a negative that for the most time they didn't sign an analyst or someone that would help
Yeah.
them to elevate their game, right?
Yes.
We heard from Diamond that he worked with them in the last few weeks of
Mm-hmm.
continuous season one, where they understood that it's like we're struggling right now.
Yeah.
And again, I don't blame them because they tried it with Indra and Hulk back in Apex Season 3 and it
Mm-hmm.
backfired on them
Mm-hmm.
because he was tweeting, tattoos to tweets and stuff like that, and not like even being on the freaking venue when his team was playing, when the team he was supposed uh, to be working for was playing. I remember tweets. So I don't blame them even for that because they had this kind of problem. But if they really are vested into winning stuff, if they really want, to make the presence, and you talk about how the recent performance affected probably the chances, although I don't think it would affect it since we know that Rogue right now wanted to sell them as a roster at first and foremost, and then they would just negotiate for specific players to be taken. So, anyways, like all this stuff together, I think created what you're saying, an environment for the other teams to not really care about this roster. Like it was rebelling in a way that, yeah, maybe if we're really in a bad situation, or maybe if like too late in the game and all the good players have been contracted, maybe we'll consider signing the full roster. But if you can sign other players with no buyouts, as you said, with no contracts obligations, with anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also, and at the same time, you don't really care about the Overwatch top spot in the league for some reason, because you're just like an investor that just throws money in this thing just to get the fandom and whatever other um, other profits you can from that, right?
Yep.
So you don't care about that. Like for example, the Cronk investor or you the Craft investor, you don't care about being the top in this industry for some reason. You're just here to make yourself known to a different audience, to get to reap the benefits of just engaging with a different demographic and stuff like that. So why would you even bother when they
Even
have such huge buyouts and stuff
yeah, I
like
mean now they are waived. We know that they now canceled those contracts with them or let them go. That implicitly means that they no longer have buyouts. So what I question is, okay, so Rogue Core definitely not employable. That in my mind makes absolutely sense at this point in time because everyone has an idea of what their Overwatch League team would look like. I think about 10 to 11 teams have finalized their core roster at least at this point.
yeah.
And it's a situation, yeah, where you can't. It's too late now for them as an entire core. Now, the question is, why, as an individual player, can a player like Anko? Okay, Anko is probably going to be in Immortals, but like, why can a player like AKM not slide into any team? Because okay, so here's my thinking too. Even if I have already a very good DPS slot, right? So I can then like the role AKM inhabited was he played a load of characters. He had a McCree, obviously all the hit scan heroes. He played Pharah for a while. He played Diva. I mean, with his soldier tracking, it's probably not ridiculous to think that he would play a very good Zarya. The guy is very versatile, right? So you have the versatility. Just have him specialize on a certain part where your DPS player is not as good in, and just let him become the best at it. And even, okay, here's the kicker: if you have the money to sustain a roster, just have two top star level players like AKM, put him onto your roster as well, and have these star players compete for their slots. Have them both feel pressure to compete not only against others in the league, exactly, but also have them compete internally for their slots, so you never get any complacency out of them. Because if you're not just competing for the top slot, but you're competing for your livelihood potentially, because if you don't play, if you just bench warm the entire season, yes, you're down and out next Overwatch League season comes around, right? So I think if you have the leftover cash, give him. I think at this point he's desperate enough to take a minimum salary offering, or maybe a little bit over.
AKM, definitely.
So
all the members of Rogue right now have problems sustaining themselves in the North America environment, because in the USA actually, because they moved over from Europe to compete in America under the premises that they're going to compete in the Overwatch League, and that they would continue for quite a while. Like, it's not going. They never thought that this dream would crash down in under a year. Right? They moved over to America, I think, in the beginning of 2017, or maybe December 2016, and like, it's not even a year, and they're facing this situation right now where either you get signed to an Overwatch League team and you sustain yourself, or you find some other thing to do, and again, like streaming or stuff like that, or Contender Season 2 is like a tournament that can sustain endemic orgs and like smaller orgs, and you can make some money and just cope with it for a short while till your chance to get signed on the Overwatch League Season 2 roster comes around. But yeah, definitely for him, like, he's right now, he's one of the cheapest, I think, options. Like, he would never even just think about it, as long as he's given the opportunity and they tell him, right, we want you. I most likely think he would say yes, right? Because he's in this desperate situation right now, and this has been, I think, the goal from Blizzard. I'm not going to accept it right now, but for me personally, it has been like this goal that they make orgs and players desperate enough to sign for these minimum salaries that they had announced. But let's leave it for another time.
Yeah.
So the problem I see with AKM, and I think it's been pointed out in the most negative way recently by Nate Nancher himself, is that in a post where he was saying that it's disappointing and sad to not be invited as a defending champion in the APAC 2017, right? Nate Nancher comes out and says, like, we didn't send invites because some people misbehaved in the Asian region before. Like, I understand that this sets a bad precedent for not inviting people, but when you say this in the context of the tweet from AKM, and sometimes in previous tournaments, like, AKM has also stated on Twitter his disagreement with the way that the tournament was run. Like, for example, in Contender Season 0, he was like, why is Joe awarding both teams a point, like, when it happened to him? And I think that's bad for him to even ask it, because it shows that you're not, like, you don't know the rules of the tournament you're in. Like, yes. That's bad. Yeah. That's bad PR. Mm-hmm. And I think even back in BT, or not, it wasn't BT Invitational or something that ZP was casting. In the end, although they had a double elimination bracket, they didn't award the team, for example, a point. The one that has finished the winners finals, the upper bracket, they didn't give them a point, and eventually they had to play 4 maps and not 3, as in previous double elimination brackets they had to face. So again, they had shown their they weren't really happy with the way things. And I think Rogue has been one of the few teams that they have expressed publicly that this agreement with some things within the Overwatch tournament system, how they run, that they expect something more. Or even Wins, for example, when he said that the PR stuff they do for Overwatch World Cup they are kind of cringy and he doesn't enjoy them. But I couldn't, hold it against them because you're
No,
allowed to express your
exactly.
disagreement with stuff like that, as long as you stay professional when you're on the team and you're like cooperating with your teammates. You're putting your best effort. You're not slacking. Like if I heard, for example, that AKM was actually slacking in his practice during his practice and he didn't practice as much as he should have, that's a warning sign for me that okay, this guy is great, but maybe given good results or whatever, he gets complacent and therefore going to lose or he's going to degenerate into something. So, but yeah, I think like the only backslash for AKM right now is bad PR that he brought upon himself. Although
Which
he's too young for him, like to state it to hold it against him, right? I wouldn't hold it
that,
against him.
but like he didn't even do anything egregious. And let's not forget that there are some players in this league who've had much, much worse PR, suicides that they
And much,
now
much worse stats.
much, much worse stats too. Like I don't know,
I don't
like
know.
if I'm sure if Thymogate can be overcome, then being a little bit passive aggressive towards tournament admins, which every player does, by the way. Like just ask
Yeah.
Nuki, everyone's a dick, and some are better at or not everyone, but most are good at covering it up and doing it behind closed doors. Like this notion that everyone needs to be a nice person to play a sport is just like what people also don't realize is that you desperately need bad boys in your league. Like
Bad boys.
it doesn't work if you don't have people that show you by contrast what good actually means, what being nice. What are we going to have? Like nice offs? Like who's nicer? Who sings their friends lullaby songs so they can go sleep at night? So this guy is nicer, and the guy that only shakes hands is like a bad guy now. Like this is an insane notion that you, as long as they have a certain amount of professionality about it, so they are being overly critical, that's fine. Don't use curse words or something, right? Okay, that would be egregious, but like you can't just all censor it away. This is not in the sense of sport either, and not like if I hear one more person like this is not sportsmanship, dude, you've never played a sport. If you think it's all fine and dandy in like in normal sports when you're standing next to the guy you ought to defend. Like everyone's talking, and everyone's talking mad shit. Like this is sport. This is the spirit of sport. Right?
I agree with you, and at the same time, it's also that the players are passionate about what they're doing, and they're going to be invested for a long time because they're so passionate about it. So you can build on that passion. Yeah, it's a bad showing if you want to if your target demographic is like small children or families or whatever, and somehow you think that this kind of disappointment, like saying it's kind of sad or asking about a rule or whatever, it's bad. But again, I think that AKM has backed up everything he said, right?
Yes.
He has earned the respect of always Su, right? The top coach in Korean scene, the coach of Fluent High. Every time he was playing, he was screams. He was just blowing his mind away. How can he do the things he does, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has earned the respect of Flower, a player who has like praised by so many in the scene, like Monte Cristo, all the casters of OGN, all Korean casters, everyone was praising Flower. And the guy had mad respect for AKM's tracking, for his positioning. Every time he was, attempting a thing, he was thinking it 3 times at least, just to figure out if AKM had like a sideline that he could shut him down. So when you have the respect from the other such players, from such personalities in a scene, for me, whatever you say, right? That it's not that's what you said. It's passive aggressive. It's not like racist or whatever.
No.
Like even you know, if you say that a food is not to your taste or whatever, I agree with it. Like, okay, it's your opinion. I'm not going to judge you in a sport because you don't like, for example, to dress as a clone or whatever like that, right? I am going to judge you on if you're going to be like racist, or if you're going to like to start unnecessary dramas for no reason. Yeah, like get these things out of my lawn, because in the end, all you're just going to do is like crave for attention. But where you're this kind of player that has earned the respect of so many personalities in the scene, right? You have this legacy with the team. You have shown many times that, yeah, you're like the carry, or you can show up in desperate situations. Do you remember back in Overwatch Open when they were facing misfits, and he done saw that insane sleep that? Do you remember who did he sat down? It was AKMs on McCree. High no, God's sake! Like,
Yeah.
this guy, if he stayed alive in that occasion, he could probably have turned the tide and changed the history of
Mm-hmm.
time right now. So when you have this kind of players that you can build content around, you can make highlight reels of their matches
He's a
for
pretty boy.
ages. For ages, yeah, he's a pretty boy. He has a pretty girlfriend as well. Like, you probably have to admit that he has a pretty girlfriend, because it's you won't sell it to the young ladies. But yeah, let's say he's a pretty boy. Okay,
Next
so
professional cook for your team.
yeah, like, I think for me that these things, when you weight them right, these things are much more important than just some bad beer or whatever. Like, I would have never thought that people in the sports industry, like, I know that it doesn't happen in Europe, right? In Europe, for example, when you're talking about sports, especially football, for example, personalities come second, right? Do you have the skill to back up your what you're saying? You're on my team, right? How much money you want? I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, 1 billion, it's all for you. Just
Yeah.
come here. We're going you're going to make this money back for us, right? We're going to create content around you. You're going to show up on the field. You will have like storylines, newspaper covering every single thing you say or you do. Like, it's so much, right? It's so much good stuff. It's so many good stuff you get out of these things than the ones you lose, right? So it's up to you, right? If you're an old owner, an old sport owner,
Yeah.
why you won't
Keep in
want to
mind,
have such a guy?
some of the most marketable players are Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which isn't the nice guy by any stretch of the imagination, right? Suarez, Pogba, Balotelli, like, these guys actually sell some shirts, right? Because they are great at what they do, and they're also notorious for what they do, right? So
I think that storylines matter more, and if you have the skill to back them up, like, it's two birds with one stone.
yeah,
Like, you never think it twice. And again, when you get him out of the rogue team and you have it on your own team, yeah, you can adjust some of his behaviors. You can like have him take some media classes or whatever, like have
Yep.
people around him constantly being mindful until he finds his way, because he's young, right? He's still, how
Yeah.
old is he? 21, 22,
yeah,
23
something like
maybe.
this, yeah.
Anyways, like, and again, like, how long will you keep him on your roster? Like 1 year, 2 years? Like, not 1 year, like 2 years, 3 years top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at some point you're going to replace him, because the more
Everyone will be.
the older he gets, like, his skill deteriorates and stuff like that. It's the inevitable nature of sports, and the
Exactly.
fact that your body so why wouldn't you want like such players? Even
Yeah.
it wins for me, like, even it wins the guy, like, I could have him on my roster, create tons of content around him, just have him there for the set token, for the trust token, or whatever, like that. Just just to have the fans go blow their minds, like, or like to go suicide with everything he says. Like, that's great engagement. That's for these
Yeah.
things. Like,
And
you will
honestly,
never get it out of people like who don't have these personalities. Like, what are they going
Exactly.
to do?
and also like banning those people from your scene really expresses a certain amount of insecurity about your product. If you think this is going to kill your appeal, maybe you have a shit product, mate, right? So
or maybe like it's literally your target demographic. It's kids, but kids that don't know think they're just going to see flashy, purple and
mate,
beautiful things. Like I don't know. Like
I teach all kinds of kids from you know, early ages to, you know, shy of university. They know these words. I can promise you they know these words and they talk these words too. Right? So
I know. Like
um
I don't get it. And again, as I said, most of the stuff we have heard, they weren't shown on stream. They weren't on the broadcast.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
during the broadcast, everyone was acting professionally, and even when they were just like saying that, okay, during the World Cups we didn't have soundproof conditions, and therefore like the crowd made it too hard for us. And yeah, for people of this caliber, like a single audio cue could mean the difference between the win and the loss, right?
Definitely.
Defeat. So I wouldn't even like yeah, either you come out and say, okay, everyone played under the same conditions, and you end the argument there, like
Yeah.
that's true. But it's like this. It's not even. I don't really. Like,
That's just stupid PR. Like, okay, so a player comes out with this. I think we had this exact train of thought before, but a player comes out with this and says, "This is bad, and it needs to be fixed." You go, the player shouldn't have said that. We are very upset at this. Instead of going, thank you, player. We will make it better the next time. This is a learning process. Positive PR +1. I don't understand like why that is such an issue, and then to be, you know, upset about this behind the scenes and sort of slight them and go like, yeah, you will, you know, you will pay for this after the fact. You will see, right? It's like,
see. I will show you. It's not.
I mean, yeah. So and let me
second class bad guys in some is like, you know, they're beaten to the ground time and time again. I will remember this, or in animes, like for example, like, you know, there's no way that it's going to hear them. Yeah.
And I guess as one last point, let's not, like, the most important part I think for both of us is, could he perform? And their performance issues were definitely there, but we have to say, when these circumstances, and we hear it time and time again, that the environment of which players play in is tremendously important. When that environment switched, they came the closest this season to beat Envious. Right?
Yeah.
So I have very few doubts in my mind that they would have probably gotten to the final in the playoffs if Mangachu managed to, you know, win that one fucking control map.
Yeah.
Jesus
Let's
Christ.
beat that dead horse. Let's beat that dead horse once more.
If we're talking about stealing from Rogue, you stole, mate. You stole. You were caught with your hand in the honey jar, right?
Yeah, let's all blame Mangatsu. Like for me, Renegades was the most interesting team to watch. Yeah, they were at the bottom of the tournament from probably day 6 or something. Like the second week basically. They were destined to end up either second to last or last. But they never gave up. They played their things. They tried their compositions. You remember those crazy Symmetra Torp compositions, or Isacom's compositions, like and these guys, right? These guys create content, create things. Like, yeah, you won't see them probably in the Overwatch League picked up. Maybe you will. I don't know, like with the decision, but they create content, and yeah, I think Mangatsu is like the best guy right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as egregious as saying, yeah, because, you know, Logix now didn't perform on one LAN event. He's not LAN material. That's why he shouldn't be in Overwatch League. No, nobody would say that realistically, right? It's like one thing that I guess we can talk about this in another episode, but it's sort of interesting that people practice in in non-LAN environments. So they all practice online, even at low ping. It's a very different game. And then you only in the tournament matches have a very different scenario where more DPS is flying around because hit rate is better. And characters behave very differently. Like, if you look at Logix, he actually missed a bunch of blink melees and everything, which looked very much a thing of netcode. That, like, if everything is more crisp, then...
We know of one thing that was affected by the fact that the tournament was played on a LAN server that Blizzard never uses outside of Overwatch World Cup and contenders.
Mm-hmm.
So no one tests things on this server. Like everything's gonna be fine. Like we never had issues with patches being broken before. So why would you think? Why would anyone think that something would happen during the Overwatch contest? So yeah, LAN is a different landscape altogether, and the fact that Blizzard has a different server with different settings, like the 144 tick, what is the ticket rate? It makes things even weirder. Like at least keep the server settings in a way that it resembles online play. Like, or if you don't, find a way that you don't have problems leading into the tournament. Like have someone test the damn thing for once. Like don't leave. I mean, we're going to do another episode about this. I think there's so much to talk about. I think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it happens. Blizzard wants the best show possible. So the one time they put some PR into Overwatch contenders, right? They post something on Twitter, they post some stuff on Discord. You have all the communities again, stuff like that. Seagull is playing just to get massive, you can get massive viewership from him. Something happens, right? Something happens, and everything is thrown away. Like it doesn't even matter. The finals day had less viewers than the semi-finals day. Like.
I mean, it's also down to a schedule, but yeah.
Anyways, I think we need to see AKM on a team. I mean, we will see it soon and Anchor probably with Immortals, but it's not finalized yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about Vincent and Nox. They're going to pursue in their careers. They're older guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Vince is 27 now or something.
Vince is old. Well, Vince is almost 30.
29.
Yeah.
I confused them too. So Nox is like 27 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so I don't know what they want to pursue with the careers, and I think Nico, we won't see him. I hope he stays around. He got the season 2 or something, and he grinds because he's underrated, right? When he was playing Genji, he could himself on Genji solely without the need to up to Diva. He had so great games that he could go up against any Genji player like you want. But the fact that he was always torn between playing Diva and playing Genji, and with the whole team not having a set plan all the time, but adjusting on the fly, it was pretty hard. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah.
What do you have for us in the end? Do you have anything?
I mean, if you want to help, guys, right? The best thing, also that America regularly teaches us, is pray for AKM. Pray for AKM like I prayed for Logix. And with that, I leave you. Episode 16, Overrated. See you guys next time. Bye.